stories matter and authenticity matters, right? And I'll start with authenticity because interestingly, the company started because of a negative experience the founder had, right? So that's real life connection to the problem, right? It was very, very important. People like stories, people connect with stories, and people can smell when you're inauthentic or when something's off.
Welcome to the GovComms podcast, bringing you the latest insights and innovations from experts and thought leaders around the globe in government communication. Now, here is your host, David Pembroke.
Hello everyone, and welcome once again to GovComms, a podcast about the practice and function of communication in government and the public sector. My name is David Pembroke. Thanks for joining me. As we begin our conversation today, may I first acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from where we are broadcasting from today, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and recognise the ongoing contribution they make to the life of our city and this region. And indeed, may I also pay my respects to all First Nations people on the lands from where anyone listening to this podcast is joining us from today. So we live and operate in a world where crisis is common, a world where bad news happens in real time, with both the community and staff looking to leaders for reassurance and certainty. Located not far from those leaders who sometimes speak from a lectern, at other times with a hard hat and fluorescent vest, are the communication professionals tasked with the job of finding the imagery and narrative path that protects confidence and maintains trust. In our digitally enabled, opinion-soaked world, it's often a hideously difficult task. How do you inspire individuals in teams during times of upheaval? How do you guide senior leaders to communicate effectively through alligator-invested swamps of bad news, tough decisions, and poor alternatives to connect authentically with diverse audiences, often from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds? And for good measure, how do you do that while dealing with the myriad of impacts on behaviours wrought by our artificial intelligence, weaponised digital tools that have and continue to radically transform the way that we live and the way that we work? Well, today my guest joins me from Lagos in Nigeria. Oluchi Ezeugo has spent her career answering some of those questions and dealing with some of those challenges. She is an experienced corporate communications professional with a record of achieving business success across Africa and beyond over the past 11 years. She's led communications for fundraising, announcement, product and brand launches, internal transformations and crisis situations in industries including TV and film, fintech and health tech. Skilled in executive communications and internal engagement, Oluchi partners with C-suite leaders to manage change, inspire employees and strengthen organisational culture. She's passionate about the power of communication to connect people to business goals, with proven success in building social media engagement and revitalising brand reputations. She joins me on the line from Nigeria. Oluchi, welcome to GovComms.
Hello, David. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm glad to be here.
So listen, we like to start at the beginning with all of our stories here on GovComms. So tell us the background, tell us the story, tell us the journey to communications professionalism for you.
Oh, wow. My journey was a happy accident, I think. I think of myself as a bit of a late bloomer to this space. The initial plan was to go to law school. But life happened and I took a detour and I found this, right? So I left the US after my undergrad, a few years after my undergrad, and I came back home and I got my first communications and marketing job. And I just fell in love with it. I clicked with it, especially with the communication side of things. And so I wanted to learn more. I wanted to learn more about what it meant to work in communications in a business, right? How those two things connected. And I decided to go to grad school, which I did in Spain, and that was great. So this was a happy accident. I wasn't thinking about this as a career path, but I'm really, really happy it found me. And yeah, it's been an interesting ride.
So tell me about that, your story of going to the States for your undergrad. What did you study? Where did you go? And why did you go?
I studied journalism and communications, interestingly, but I was thinking of law school, right? I wasn't thinking at the time, I didn't even know there was a career like this. And so, yeah, I was thinking of law school and what I could do with that. So that was the plan. I went to Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota. It's a small private university in Moorhead, Minnesota, and it was a really great 4 years for me. And why I wanted to try something different. I wanted to live somewhere different. I wanted to experience a different part of the world. So I'm like, yeah, why not? Yeah, that's that's why I went.
Minnesota's a long way from Nigeria and
It
a
is.
lot colder. What sort of
Yeah.
impacts did that? What sort of impacts did that have on you, though, as a person? When you look back on that time, what did you learn about yourself, and what did you learn about life?
Oh wow, that's a great question. I also say if you have a chance, live abroad at some point in your life. I think everybody should if they have a chance. I know that's not always possible. Yeah, you learn a lot about yourself. I learned that I am resilient. I've kind of known this, but I learned that I'm resilient. I learned that I could do hard things. I can live in a place that gets to what below 40 degrees freezing and survive and thrive. And I learned that people are really interesting. Like I really enjoyed meeting different people. I think I've always had that desire. I think part of it is also my parents and just the way we are. They traveled quite a bit. So there's always this thing to learn about different people and meet different people. Yeah, I learned that I enjoy that. I enjoy learning. I enjoy exploring new ideas. Yeah, and I'm resilient. I can do hard things and I can thrive despite doing hard things.
My experience of the best communicators are that at their heart they like people, and
Yeah.
they're interested in people, and they're curious about people, and it doesn't matter what type of people. Sort of anybody who sort of comes
Yeah.
into their realm, uh, because everyone has a story. Everyone
Hmm.
has an interest. And if you take the time to ask the questions, you'll generally find that you'll learn something, which will help you as you sort of gather your various data as you go through your practice of then trying to understand, well, okay, how is it that we're going to move forward with whatever it is that we're tasked
Yeah.
with on any particular day? So when you arrived home and you stored away your snow boots and thought, well, I'm not going to need those for a while. Where was your first? Where did you sort of aim to? As you said, sort of law school was sitting there. Grad school hadn't probably come too much on the horizon, but where was that first job, and what did you do?
Yeah, so it was in a identity company, a verification identity company, right? So it's more like a software as a service, a SaaS company. And yeah, I led marketing and communications. That was my first major communications marketing type role, and it was they were a startup, so it was really, really new, really early days. They're still going now and doing well. So it was really thinking about the story they wanted to tell, what the brand was about, how we connect to all these stakeholders, right? So yeah, that was my role, that was my job, and it was really, really interesting and challenging and all of that.
And in terms of that core audience that you were seeking to influence and reach and
Mm.
to understand, who was it, and what did you find were the best ways to try to uncover, those key insights that would help you to build effective strategy and tactics?
So it was a mix of businesses and families. And I say families because here in Nigeria, it's common to hire help, right? A lot of people hire help and bring help into their home, whether it's drivers or maids, etc. Right? So they were a core audience because the goal for that company was to educate people on how to verify identities, right? Like, don't just bring people into your homes, like verify their identity, their background, all of that. So they were a key audience. And it really goes to what you said before. It was about understanding the people, asking questions, getting their stories, right? And also telling stories of why this software made sense for them, either as a business or as a family, an employer of informal labor, so to speak. Why did this software make sense for you, and why should you care about it? So that was what we did. It was really telling stories, understanding those audience groups and finding ways to connect to them, and also understanding even the folks who were the workers as well, because their stories were also important, right? And also letting them know why this made sense for them. So it also gave them safety when they went to work in these different homes or offices, right? There's safety, and you're verified. And so it was all those stories, piecing them together, telling stories, hearing people's stories, and just connecting in that way. That was a big thing for us, because it's a very people centric business, right? So the people were important. So that was how we went about it.
So back from that particular experience, what did you learn that you still apply to this day in terms of building understanding, building that using that curiosity to actually uncover the genuine insights and to understand what is meaningful, what's not so important. And so what did you take from that experience that you still apply today, that you know to be true because it's worked for you so many times?
So stories matter and authenticity matters, right? And I'll start with authenticity because, interestingly, the company started because of a negative experience the founder had, right? So that's real life connection to the problem, right? It was very, very important. And it goes into stories as well. Stories matter. People like stories. People connect with stories. And those are two things I have taken with me. I think they're true regardless of what you do, but those things have really, really stuck with me, and I found them to be even more true in this field of communication. Stories matter, authenticity matters, and people can smell when you're inauthentic or when something's off.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly endorse that, because I think, particularly in this day and age, I think things are even more attuned to, people's senses of, what's real and what's not real. They'll pick it up pretty quickly. And, if you're not arriving in an authentic manner, in a way that they can understand and engage with you and with what the story that you want to tell, but also they'll know if you're not listening as well. If you're just throwing it out and not sort of taking time for the reception piece, that will certainly sort of mitigate against the ability to create any sort of meaningful trust, which ultimately leads to effective relationships down the path. So from there, where did you head off to next? Because you've landed in a career where you're advising C-suite advisors. That doesn't happen overnight. So what was next? Obviously, grad school in Spain. That sounds like another wonderful experience.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. That was the next adventure after this job.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was grad school in Spain. It was great. And
what was that? What sort of masters was that? Was that a marketing masters, a comms masters,
it was
or
comms,
something
so
else entirely different? Comms.
No, it was comms, corporate communications. Yeah, yeah. I think they've changed it a bit now. I think it's marketing communications, but at the time it was corporate communications, and that involved, gosh, everything from branding to internal communications, which I fell in love with, to crisis communications, some executive communications, like all of that, right? So, and it was really great because it helped me connect the dots that I was looking for. I wanted to understand this field in terms of how it applied to a business, to a corporation, and how it affected business outcomes and the people in the business. So it was a really, really, really good time.
Okay, so you've landed back in Nigeria. You've put the I don't know, the beach towel away this time. I don't know, whereabouts in Spain was it?
In Madrid.
Oh, okay. Where did you land? What was the next best opportunity, or the next biggest opportunity, or the next break that you got?
Yeah, so I came back home and I actually went back to the company I worked at before I went to
Okay.
grad school. They wanted me back for a bit. So I did that. It was great. I was familiar with them, so I did that. And interestingly, I started working with the CEO more the second time around than I did the first time in terms of executive comms. I started just learning more about that in practice, right? So after that, I moved on, and then I went into TV and film, which was very different space, but again, still good. A lot of learning, a lot of still about people, but in a different way. You're still telling stories. Some of them are many of them are fictional, right? Because you're dealing with TV and film, but you're still finding ways to connect people in terms of entertainment and storytelling and fantasy. It was a very different space. It was great, but I also learned that okay, that's not really for me. I don't think I want to. I don't think I want to work in this field. The beauty of comms, you can work pretty much anywhere. But yeah, it wasn't really for me. And then I moved on to my first internal communications role. I had never done that before. I knew about it. I fell in love with it in grad school. I did my final project in internal comms in grad school, but I had never worked in it before. And I think that was a really pivotal time for me in my career because I could see myself doing internal comms for the rest of my career, and I still can. I loved that job. It was really interesting, challenging, dynamic, fun, exciting, hard, great. It was really good, and it really brought to light the ideas of people and storytelling and authenticity. It brought them to light a lot more because these are your people in the company. They see behind the curtain, right? So there is, I think, a different level of authenticity that's needed for your people, a different level of connection. So yeah, I loved it. That was one of my favorite jobs, and it was great. Yeah, and then that was also a really good learning time in terms of working with executives and C-suite. I did a lot of that in that role, and it was really helpful.
How big a company was it, and what area was it in the in the economy that you were working in? What sector?
Yeah, it was at the peak, they were about 1,300. And then
Okay.
there were a couple of layoffs, unfortunately, and came down to about 600. And then they were, I would say, engineering as a service, right? So they had engineers, and these engineers would work with other companies, right? So the engineers were the service. Kind of think of it as a like a talent marketplace, right?
So you say that you fell in love with internal comms first of
Hmm.
all while studying, but then when
Yeah.
you arrived post your, it sounds like a very brief film and television career. When you arrived, you say that you immediately in love in it. Was it that sense of team that drove it? That was that ability that you were now part of something and you were part of a team and that team had an objective and your job was pretty clear as to, you were going to have to communicate the strategy, you were going to have to communicate the values, you were going to have to bring enthusiasm, you're going to have to, what was it that part of that internal communications challenge that lit you up, so to speak?
I think it was all of that. And also the fact that I could see the impact of my work in a way that I didn't always see it with the external side of things. Right? I could see
Yeah.
it with the people, with teams, with managers, with executives, how when they understood where the business was going, when the feedback was positive, that they understood this, or they felt like they were heard, they felt like they had a voice. I I could see it. I could see it, and that was it was really powerful. So I hadn't, I mean, I had seen the impact of my work before, but this was it was closer. It was closer to me, and it was quite powerful, and it just made it a lot clearer what the power of communication can be, especially when it's your people and they get it. And then I also saw that it made even the folks on the external side, it made their jobs easier, right? Because people understood what was happening, they were on board, right? So there was this synergy that made the external side of things even easier. So it was everything you said plus this impact that I could see. yeah, that made it click for me.
It sounds like you were located pretty close to the C-suite then for that opportunity, if you were able to have such an impact. Or was it that you were well led by some senior executive who brought you along to give you those opportunities, to give you that access? Because I think that again is another key point, that if you, as a communicator, if you are sitting as part of the senior leadership group or part of the senior leadership team, whether you are a part of that team or a provider of advice to them, you certainly have great access to information, which you can then, you bring your skills and knowledge and your behaviour and your attitude to then help shape them and to, bring your skills to help them to be effective in the various parts of their business. So where were you? Were you an offsider to the senior executive, or were you working to someone who was a part of that senior leadership group?
It was both. It was both. So my manager was part of the leadership team. So she was great in bringing me along and carrying me along. And she was great. She was one of the best managers I've ever had. But I was also close to because there was a country director here in Nigeria. So I literally saw her almost every day. So that also made my job easier. Plus, I had regular conversations with other country directors. So I was close. And I had the benefit of working with a manager, a leader who brought me along, who was part of those high level conversations and brought me along and shared information with me. So I didn't feel like I was doing my job with my hands tied. And so that was really helpful.
That's a super interesting point, isn't it? That leadership has such an important part to play in people's effectiveness. And even if it wasn't a formal mentorship role, by bringing you along, by not feeling threatened, by understanding that you were going to be, if you were successful, they were going to be successful, that it makes all the difference. So I have a similar story, but right at the beginning of my career, it was my first job out of university, and I had a fantastic boss. And he took me to every meeting. He said, just come and just sit in the corner. You don't have to say anything, but just learn. And I just learned by being in those meetings. And he often would ask me at the end of those meetings, he'd say, well, what do you think? What did you see? What did you think about when so-and-so reacted? Or what did you... And that gave me the confidence to think, well, okay, I'm bringing my full self to this particular task, and empowered me to think, because I knew he was going to ask me what I thought. I wasn't there just to sit in the corner. But then that gave me the confidence to then, and it sounds like you got exactly the same thing. And the fact that your manager was then saying to you, well, you've got free range, and you were then going and working with the country manager who was probably doing exactly the same thing, saying, well, get on with it. So it's that importance of leadership and mentorship, isn't it? And that confidence in that leadership to allow you to be who you needed to be, to allow you to do your best work.
Yeah, 100% agreed. Yeah, 100%. That's really
has that had a big impact on your leadership style now? Are you the same with the people who now work for you?
Yes. I've been quite blessed to have a lot of good managers. I've been really blessed. There may be a couple that weren't so great, but I'm not going to talk about them. But for the majority of my career, I've been really, really blessed to work with a lot of incredible people and really amazing managers who knew how to challenge and nurture at the same time. I think it's such a brilliant skill. And this manager was really, really good at that. And some of the things she even said to me then have stuck with me, and I've carried them. Her and another manager I had in a different life, and I was a paralegal. But yeah, those two of them in particular, their management styles are very similar, and it stuck with me. And I try to do that with people I lead, even if whether or not I even have an official leadership position. I like to bring that energy with me, just finding ways to challenge and nurture people, finding ways to make people feel empowered, making them feel like, yeah, your voice matters, your perspective matters, right? I just, you can't go wrong. I just find that you can't go wrong with that kind of mindset. So it's definitely something that has stuck with me, and I always try to be conscious to take that with me because I know how it feels to have that kind of manager. So I want other people to feel like that, right? If that makes sense, as opposed to the opposite.
What were some of those things? You mentioned a couple of things that you've taken with you. What
Yeah.
are those? What are those pearls of wisdom?
Well, one, and you kind of alluded to it, like your perspective matters, right? So whether it's something like asking you or bringing you along on meetings, or if they can't do that, sharing things with you that they get from meetings, having regular conversations with you, asking you what do you think about this, and even sometimes not pushing you in a good way, like stretching you, like giving empowering you to work on stretch assignments, right? And not even always giving you the answers. I find that that's important. So wanting to hear from you, wanting you to trust your instincts, that's a big one. Wanting you to trust your instincts and share your perspective and run with it, right? Those are some things that have stuck with me, that I've taken with me. So like I said, it's that interesting mix of challenging and nurture and encouragement, right? It's a very interesting mix. Like they just knew how to challenge you in a positive way, so stretch you, push you, help you feel more confident in your abilities and your instincts, and encourage you and nurture you, right? So even if you get it wrong or you make a mistake, they've created an environment where you can even go to them and say, hey, here's what happened. There was this mistake, but here's what I'm going to do to correct it. They also created a safe environment. That is a big one. A psychologically safe environment. That is another pearl that I have taken with me. That is so, so important because a lot of times your experience in a company is affected by your manager and how they lead you. So that creating a psychologically safe environment is something that I've taken with me. It's a big pearl that I always try to do. And then trusting your people, right? You brought them on the team for a reason. So trust them, give them what they need, and let them fly in a sense because they're there for a reason. You trusted their experience or their skill or their mindset or their ability. So trust them because, like, as you said, when they shine, you shine too. It looks good on you as the manager, as the leader. So, yeah, these are some of the pearls I've taken. Trust your team, create a psychologically safe environment, help them trust their instincts more and trust their voice. And I think it makes the team better for it.
Now, it's not always fun, and you alluded to a period there of great challenge, and I can only imagine what that was like to be a part of the, telling a difficult story as you're trying to arrange a respectful and dignified and fair departure where you're managing a huge number of layoffs, as you mentioned before. Tell me that story and tell me, the role that you played and how you applied your knowledge and your skill and your behavior to deliver the best possible outcome for the company and most importantly for the people who were affected.
Yeah, that was a tough time. I hope I actually never have to deal with a time like that for the rest of my career. The first layoff, unfortunately, that the company had was they had to lay off about 200 people. And interestingly, my manager had left maybe a couple months before, I think. So I was the only internal comms person in the company. We were looking for somebody else to replace her, the director, but we hadn't found somebody at that time. So I was the only person. I had support as well, but a lot of the tasks fell on me, right? And around the same time as she left, that was when I found out that this was happening. This was going to happen. So we had, maybe a month or so, a little over a month to prepare for this huge news. And so I literally did what I knew to do, right? I asked questions. I asked a lot of questions from leadership before I even put any plan together, right? I needed to understand why this was happening, how they thought this huge change would even get the company closer to their goals, right? So I try to ask a lot of the questions that I was pretty sure, and it did happen, that employees would have, because I needed to understand it and I needed to obviously help folks understand it, right? So I did all that, talk with leadership. And then I started putting a plan together. So, how do we want to communicate this? Who are all the people who will be involved? So, it was working with everybody from HR to operations. HR was a big partner in this because they were involved in the actual mechanics of getting folks onboarded and all that. Leadership as well was a big one. We had a bunch of meetings. So just putting all that plan together, how we would say, what we would say, when we would say, what were the timelines, and then how would we know that that we handled this well, right? And yeah, we did get feedback from the folks who were left about maybe a week or two, because I kind of timed it to be about a couple of weeks after folks had actually left, just to get their thoughts and what they thought about the communication. Because it was important to me that we, despite the difficult time, that we maintained as much authenticity, clarity as possible, and that we also handled this with care and dignity. These are people, these are human beings and lives and families, incomes affected, right? So everything from what we were even doing for the folks who were let go of, I kind of was a pest to HR. I needed them to tell me everything as much as possible. What were we doing for these folks? How are we going to take care of them? What were we providing? Don't hide anything. Don't sweep anything under the rug. I needed that clarity because people ask those questions. So my instincts were right. So I even put together toolkits for people. Here are questions you should think about for leadership. I also advised the leaders to come to Nigeria because the bulk of the folks who were affected were in Lagos. So we had to do a town hall, a general town hall, and I advised them, as many as could come, to actually be here in person. Like it wasn't, I didn't think it was a good thing to have it virtually. They needed to see, especially the CEO and some of the other C-suite people, as many as possible. They needed to see them here to know that they cared and it wasn't just something they were doing from the safety of their screen. And, like I didn't want that disconnect. I wanted them here. And it was good. They took my advice. Thankfully, they came. People asked questions. So all of that, it was just the planning, the actual mechanics of how we're going to do this. As I said, what, when, why, how. I always try to start with those basics. So what are the key messages? What do we want people to take from this? Both the folks who were leaving and the folks who were left behind, because they were another group that we also needed to think about. How do we want them to feel? How do we want them to feel cared for, listened to, respected? So that's how I approached it. I had to forget about myself as an employee in a sense and just focus on the work of the communication so that I could actually get through it and deliver something that was impactful and still respectful. That was really, really important to me. And yeah, we got good feedback from folks who were left behind and they thought it went well. They thought it was clear. They felt like leadership on the spokespeople were authentic and they didn't, like sweep things under the rug or use corporate speak. They told them what was happening, why it was happening, how folks would be taken care of. Yeah, and found ways to still make sure that people felt connected, right, despite the difficult circumstances. So despite the circumstances, I'm proud of how the work went. We did a good job. I did a good job. And yeah, I'm proud that people felt that care and felt the care and intention that I put into the plan.
Am I right in understanding that that wasn't the end of it, that you then had more to do after that, that there were more layoffs?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the second one affected me and my new manager at the time. Yeah. So, and that was right at COVID.
Oh, no.
I know it was. I had no part in that one because my entire team was
You're on the
eliminated.
receiving end.
Yeah. So
And was that handled, given that you weren't involved, was that handled as well, or was it a little bit more less respectful?
So it was respectful. I have to say that it was still respectful. I did feel, and also because so I wasn't involved, so I didn't have as much. I didn't have a heads up, so I don't know how much time they had. I don't know when they knew it would happen, but it did feel a bit abrupt to me. Just a bit abrupt.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, it felt a bit abrupt. Yeah, we didn't have the one I was involved in. There was more. There was a bit more leeway, right? We there was a way we eased
Yeah, you
into it,
had
so it didn't
time.
feel
Yeah.
abrupt, right? Yeah, but this one felt abrupt, right? I think
Yeah.
literally it happened in maybe 2 weeks or something, and
Yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah, I wasn't involved in the planning, so yeah.
how did you feel and how did you react to that, particularly around COVID? That would have been if not the worst time to get that sort of news, then it'd be pretty close. So
Yeah,
just
yeah.
from a personal point of view, how did you cope?
Oh, I was hurt. I was so hurt because I loved my job, David. I loved my work there. I loved it. I had gotten offers to leave. I had people reach out to me, but I said, no, I don't
Oh,
want to leave. I'm happy here. I had just gotten a promotion. I
oh,
loved my work. I really grieved. I don't think I've ever grieved for a role like I did for that.
yeah,
I grieved for a couple of months after that. So I was really hurt because I did not see that coming. And the new director, my new manager, who was also great as well, that we had gotten a few months before, she was also affected, like the entire team and so many people, about 130 something people. So I was really hurt. I was really hurt. But yeah, I'm okay now. It was just, yeah, it was a tough time.
what advice do you have for people to deal with those types of setbacks? Because it could be they haven't got a promotion that they thought that they deserved, or they haven't got the job that they knew that they were the best, they felt that they were the best qualified for, and that invested
Mhm.
everything in it. Because everyone deals with like serious disappointment, but what happened to you was clearly, maybe or beyond a serious disappointment, because it did affect your livelihood. But then, how did you go about rebuilding your confidence? Because I imagine that would have taken a fairly decent whack when
Yeah,
you felt
yeah,
that you're at the top of your game, and then all of a sudden you're standing out on the street.
yeah. Oh.
I'm sorry to take you back there, but I'm intrigued.
It's okay. It's been a while. It's okay. I had to literally let myself feel all the feelings. I
Yeah,
had to just feel it, and thankfully, again, a support system is good. So thankfully, I had an amazing support system, my family and friends, and they really held me up in this time and reminded me, like you're saying, of the things I had done, like
yeah,
reminded people who had worked with me that who then became friends, reminded me of the great work I had done and the things I had done, and like I'm a good person, like all these things that they just poured into me. They were really, I needed to hear all of that, right? And
yeah,
then even the fact that I had just gotten a promotion literally like 2 months before helped, because it reminded me that, hey, I did good work. I've done good work. I will still do good work. This is not the end. So it was having those people around me, those words of affirmation, or just those reminders. They were really
yeah.
helpful. I didn't always want to hear it, but I needed to hear it, and they just kept pouring into me. And it really, really helped me. And I had to also just let myself, the moments where I just needed to grieve and cry and just feel those things, and then okay, as I had to just remind myself of the good work I've done and my family and friends, and just remind myself of their words and the things they were saying to me, and really hold on to them, and really knowing that it was a temporary thing. Yeah, it felt horrible. It felt horrible, but I knew it was temporary, right? I think there's something about knowing this is a temporary thing that helps. At least for me, it helps me. I knew it was temporary. I knew it wouldn't be the end. I knew I would get back on my feet again. And I did. And literally, well, like 2 months after the layoff, I got another job. So that helped. I know it doesn't always work like that, but that helped. So it's really finding those nuggets of positivity, whether it's through your loved ones who remind you of who you are and the work you've done. And then also, this is something that has helped me as well. I always keep some sort of like people call it different things, like a win folder or document or something, where
Oh
I
yeah, a
have just a
journal.
record. Yeah, it could be a journal. I've done it online, like in Google Docs. Just all the good work I've done, the accomplishments I have had in my life. Not even always work. Sometimes just life, just things that I have done and things that I've scaled through. I went back and I read all of those. It was again just reminding myself of, okay, this too
Yeah,
shall pass. It really, really sucks, but you will be okay. You went to a new country by yourself when you were 18 in a cold
yeah.
weather. You survived it. You've done a lot of cool things. You will be okay. So I had to
Mm.
literally dig deep in that way and do that. And again, thankful for my loved ones who made that process easier. They made it easier. So I think it would have been harder if I didn't have that support system, but they really helped as well. And and it made the process easier. Yeah. So that's how I dealt with it. And that's how I've dealt with a lot of hard times, right, in my life. It's again that the support system and reminding yourself of the times you've scaled through things, the times you've achieved, the times you've healed and moved on. And it doesn't mean you don't sit in those feelings or feel them, but don't live there, because I think if you live there, sometimes it's a lot harder to come out of it, in my opinion. Yeah, knowing it's temporary, that really helps.
And often it leads, and it doesn't help you at the time, as you sort of have to, as you say, sort of live with the misery, particularly in the immediate paths of it where you can't actually see, you can't quite, you haven't got to the point where the path emerges, but ultimately we do know that it gets there. But it often leads to the next thing, the next opportunity, and you obviously found that opportunity. But what's the latest opportunity? What are you working on at the moment? And what are the biggest challenges that you've got at the moment in the role that you have as a communicator?
I took a break this year, maybe 5-6 months. I just needed to step away from work. So I'm thankful I was able to do that. But I just kind of got back into work.
What happened? What happened there?
You
just burnt yourself out?
Yeah, I just needed to just rest. I hadn't taken that kind of break ever. I just needed to just not work for a while.
Are your work habits good or not so good? Like, do you work a lot? Do you work at night?
Yes, I like working.
Naughty girl. You're not allowed to do that.
I know. But I have gotten better at it, though. It used to be worse a few years ago. I have gotten better at just disconnecting. Yeah, I've gotten better at it. But yeah, I like working. I think I'm a bit of a workaholic. But I think the more you like working, the more you have to, be better at disconnecting, right? And focusing on other things. So yeah, I took a break because I just needed that reset. And then I just got back into work. I'm working in a PR agency now. It's a contract role, but it's been a good way to get back into the workspace and just get the swing of things again. And so it's a good place. The people are great. I knew them before, so it's a good place. And I'm exploring PR agency side of things, but I'm still doing some internal comms, and I'm still doing some of that corporate type comms, just in a different environment. So yeah, we'll see. But so far, so good.
So tell me the three things that you're looking at when you sort of stand back and you have a look at the communications landscape. Give me three things that you're seeing at the moment that people need to be paying attention to. The purpose of this podcast is simply to really and through story, people learn. So it's great that you've shared some of those stories with us, which is great. So people have learned about that. But from this is from a work comms point of view. What are the things that have got your attention that you're working on to ensure that you're effective for your clients?
AI is a big one for sure. So I think as communicators, we need to keep an eye on that. And we also need to learn how to work with AI and how to use AI to make our jobs richer, more dynamic. Because I think there is a space for that without forgetting our own instincts and our own voices and our own experiences, right? Because our job is a people focused job, in my opinion. And AI there's some things AI just can't do. Like, it's not going to get certain nuances and context and things like that. But there are ways we can use it to make our jobs easier and better, more dynamic, and even free us up to focus on more strategic things, right? So I think AI is definitely one that we should keep an eye on and just be aware of, right? I would also say internal communications, right? In terms of, because I'm even seeing a lot of companies, especially I think in this part of the world, are becoming more aware of the power and the value of internal communications, because for so long I think the West has been better at this in terms of thinking about their people and how they communicate with their people. A lot of companies in this part of the world are just kind of coming to that, right? There's a lot more awareness that's coming up, and that's very exciting for me. So it's they're thinking about their people more in that way as a stakeholder group, right? So how are we communicating with our people the way we do with all the external stakeholders? Because they're understanding more and more that those two things are connected. Like, you can't you can't focus on one and forget the other. For you to have a company that really, really thrives, regardless of the industry you're in, your people, your employees are just as important as your customers or your partners or your investors or donors, etc. So I think internal comms is also something that we should keep an eye on and be excited about. We saw a surge in interest in that space during COVID. I think that's still happening in a different way, and people are understanding more the strategic value of that space. The third one, well, maybe social media, and I say this in terms of social media is still a powerful tool, right? It's still important. It's still, I mean, the Gen Z folks, the young, I'm not Gen Z, but I know a lot of them, I don't remember what the number is, but a lot of them even get a lot of their news on TikTok, for example, right? So that Gen Z audience and the younger audience, their relationship to social media, what does that mean for your brand? What does that mean for your company or your organization? Does it matter? Are you focusing on that? Do you care about that? It's such a part of people's lives in a way that even for me as a millennial, I don't think it was like that growing up or when I was younger. But now it's embedded right into the fabric of our lives. And so I think it's just worth keeping an eye on and figuring out if it makes sense for you or your brand or the company or your clients, wherever you work. If it does, why or why not, right? And also figuring out if that impacts your communication strategy at all or not, right? And how that will just play into all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think there are three very good things to focus on. AI, I think social media, I think they're all interconnected, and at the heart of all of it is people. I know, like I'm very much towards the end of my career. I'm 60. What am I now? 62. Well before you were born, there was a television show called The $6 Million Man, and effectively this guy got busted and they had to rebuild him from the ground up into the $6 million man. Well, that's how I feel now. Like I've got to rebuild all of these skills that I've now, because on another project that I'm working on, I'm on TikTok every day, understanding how people are communicating. It's all changing. We've now got, AI tools that are helping us to create, distribute, evaluate, research, all of those different elements. So we're sort of at this point, I think, of transformation where people are people are people. So that's, I think that at least we can hold on to that.
Yeah.
But I think everything else that are around them is driving change and changing behavior. And it's like, I find it's fascinating, and I'm more energized now than I've ever been at any time in my career because of what I see to be this ability to go direct. The way people consume information, the way, as you say, the earlier about that need for authenticity, the need and the ability now that we have to be able to go direct, to connect to people, to tell those stories. By turning up consistently, with useful, relevant, consistent information. Anyway, it's just such a different context that we're now operating in. I think from a communicator's point of view, that really you have to step on the elevator and get involved. And if you're not, it's probably time to step away from the elevator and go and find, maybe take up the next part of your career, because I think all of us are going to have a whole different kit bag of skills to be effective in this new sort of AI-enabled world. I think, as I say, we can be hopeful that people aren't going to change too much, the ones that we're trying to get to, but how we build those sort of authentic relationships with them over time so that they'll listen to us and that we'll have earned a right to their most precious time and their attention. Well, it's going to be a different way to be able to do that. But a very exciting way. And I think for communicators, we are now becoming more important in public sector organisations, private sector organisations. That the power of story sits at the essence of so much these days. So, there's a lot to look forward to. And I'm sure you will continue to do great things. Are you going to move from Lagos, Nigeria, and do other things outside Africa, or is the plan just to stick around and do good work there?
That would be great. I'm open to that. So let's see where the wind takes me. I'm open to doing great
Well,
work here or somewhere else.
yeah, but that's the thing also, isn't it? I think also in this new world that we live in, depending on what it is that you do, you can build audiences in all sorts of interesting places. On this project that I'm working on, this other project, which is a content project, we have tens of thousands of listeners, watchers now on YouTube, but in over 135 countries. People tune into our content every week because we've got a story to tell, or we're telling a story that's of interest to a very big audience, and they can find you now. YouTube, like, who would have thought, 12 months ago that YouTube would now be the dominant platform for podcasting? Guess what? It is.
Something. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So, and I think that's the other thing is, you've got to stay on your toes. Things change so quickly these days, and you've just got to stay alert about where those opportunities are going to come from. But anyway, at the heart of it, stories aren't going to go out of fashion and people aren't going to change too much in my view. So it's just working out how everything else works around it is going to be the big challenge. But listen, Oluchi, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, sharing your wisdom. The purpose of GovComms is really to give people exposure to different people working in communications in different parts of the world in different ways. And through story, we learn. And I know that people will have taken a lot from you today about risk-taking, being resilient, helping people to understand that their perspective matters. To speak up and to trust your instincts and to go with it, because it's always important. That richness of the experience feeds into all good teams, and you need everybody giving their contribution in order for you to be as effective as possible. But thank you so much for sharing some time with us today. We'll let you get back to your busy day, and to you, the audience, thank you for coming along today. What a great conversation with a very charming and impressive young professional there in Lagos, Nigeria. Oluchi knows the business. She's worked through the business. The only reason I do this podcast is because I learn. Look at all these notes that I've got here that I'm going to take away, and I'm going to put them into my work practices, because you can never stop learning. I can tell you that now. And in the world that we're living in, you're going to have to take direction and understand and learn from those stories that Oluchi shared with us today. But to the audience, thank you for coming back once again. Please leave us a rating, a review, a comment, a share. Any type of engagement does help us to be found, does help others to engage with the content that we've been producing since 2015. That was when the first GovComms program was produced all those years ago. So much to talk about in the world of communications, not only in government and the public sector, but also from someone like Oluchi, who brings to us a different perspective, but certainly the truth of effective communication. But thanks to you, audience, for coming back once again. My name is David Pembroke. We'll be back at the same time in next month with another story from the wonderful world of communications. But for the moment, please be kind to each other. My name is David Pembroke, and it's bye for now.